That is not your average sledgehammer. Think of an airgun, a sledgehammer, and No Country for Old Men, all mixed together. Now, this whole idea actually started more than 10 years ago. As a teenager, I spent a summer working on a construction site. They didn't even pay me. It was just punishment for losing a year at school, and all they made me do was hitting short concrete walls with a little sledgehammer. We had a pneumatic hammer there. They just didn't give it to me. So I basically spent a whole summer wishing hammers were more powerful. So now, I wanna make the wish come true. Fast forward 2 weeks of trying a bunch of different things and really getting into character. And now, I think I've got something. This hammer basically looks like a normal one. Until you open it. The extra power comes from pressurized air and a steel piston that moves forward like a bullet, but never leaves the device, therefore allowing multiple hits with a single refill of air. The problem is that, right now, this thing is just pixels on a screen. I have absolutely no idea how powerful it would be, or even if all these parts will actually fit together. So before machining them out of stainless steel, which is a pretty slow and expensive process, to make sure the model actually works, I'm gonna build a prototype. And to do that, I'm gonna 3D print the parts using resin. Full disclosure, Formlabs reached out and I told them I wanted to make an unnecessarily powerful hammer. And they sent me a printer with no strings attached. But I wanna show you how it works because these things are fascinating. Just like a normal 3D printer, you place the parts on a virtual platform and the software figures out the best way to build them layer by layer. But compared to a classic 3D printer, which melts a plastic filament and places it to form the layers of the object, in a resin printer, the platform moves down into a tank filled with liquid resin. At this point, a laser draws each layer into the resin, hardening only the shape you need. Then the platform lifts a little, fresh resin flows under it, and the laser does the next layer, until your whole object comes out of the liquid. Now, unlike a classic 3D printer, where the parts are ready right after the print is done, before being able to handle the resin ones, I first need to wash them for a few minutes in IPA to remove the resin in excess, separate them from the platform to let them dry, and then cure them with heat and UV light to increase their mechanical properties. And after removing the supports, I finally got all the components of the hammer's prototype. And they look very nice. Let's see if they all fit together though. So, I'm gonna explain the function of each component and show you how the hammer works as I assemble it. Now, the heart of the whole device is this valve. You usually find this inside airguns. On one side, it's hooked up to a pressurized air tank, and on the other, there is a sort of pin that slides back and forth. In an air rifle, when you pull the trigger, a spring-loaded hammer hits that pin and knocks it inward. Now, that quick tap opens the valve for a split second, letting a burst of high-pressure air rush into the barrel and launch the projectile. And in this hammer, the valve basically does the same thing. On one side, like in an air rifle, it's connected to an air tank. I just couldn't find one that fit inside the hammer and still kept everything symmetrical. So I'm making a custom one by having 2 thick steel pieces that screw together. But what makes this device very different from an air rifle is how the valve gets activated. We know the valve opens when you push this pin inward. And since this is literally a hammer, I figured the smartest way to strike that pin is to use the hammer's impact against the targets. I'm gonna show you how it works without the shell. In front of the valve, there is this sort of cylinder with a central bore. This part goes all the way to the front of the hammer and connects to a plate that slightly sticks out of the chassis. Now, when the hammer hits something, that plate gets pushed inward. And that motion travels through the internal components, making the pin slide, activating the valve, and dumping a burst of pressurized air into the barrel. Which brings us to the last element of the device, the bolt. Now, this is where this hammer airgun actually becomes more similar to a captive bolt gun, which is the same thing they used in No Country for Old Men. When the valve opens, the sudden burst of air launches the bolt forward and shoots it out of the front of the hammer. Now, I have no idea what the final energy will be. Based on some rough calculations, this thing should be fast and hit very hard. Either way, the bolt shoots forward, hits the target, and in doing so, it clears the vents that let the leftover pressure escape from the hammer. The bolt never actually leaves the hammer though. There is a special set of springs around it that stop it and reset the system. And since after one shot, there's still going to be air inside the tank, the hammer should be immediately ready to fire again. Anyways, the prototype of the hammer is completed. And now, I kinda wanna test it. Now, using high pressure and plastic parts would probably win me a Darwin Award, so I'm gonna only use a little bit, just to see if the valve actually activates when I push the front plate. I'm also gonna leave the bolt out. I just wanna see if air comes out of the hammer. Anyways, I tried first filling the tank with a normal compressor, but nothing really happened. So then I switched to the PCP compressor, pumped for 3 seconds, and once again, nothing. Kinda starting to get worried. So now I'm trying to disassemble the hammer to understand what's going on. And without the front shell, it actually worked. So I think I was basically over-tightening the bolts of the front shell. And because of that, I was pushing the pin all the time, so I couldn't fill the tank. But let's see if it works now.
Yes!
And yes, it does. At this point, I can finally make the functional version out of steel. The problem is that I do have a CNC machine here, but it's a small one. It's great for aluminum, great for wood and plastic, but it can't really handle harder materials. But then, something unexpected happened. A guy who follows the channel and lives an hour drive from my house wrote me an email. Hi, I'm a mechanical engineer and I have a big shop with a very cool CNC machine. Do you need help? Well, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm making a hammer that kinda shoots bullets. Do you wanna help? Sure. This guy's name is Fabio, and he has indeed a very nice shop. And so, with these CNC machines, it only took a few days to have all the final steel parts ready to be assembled. Anyways, after putting together the components, I officially present to you the bolt hammer. I'm not sure you can have a crash on a hammer, but I think I have a crash on a hammer. In any case, at this point, I just gotta see if it works and how powerful it is. To fill the tank, I'm gonna use the PCP compressor. Right now, it's set to about 1/3 of the maximum pressure the tank can take, which is about 4,500 psi. For this first test, I'm also gonna leave the bolt out of the hammer. I just wanna see if by pushing the front plate, the valve actually activates and releases the burst of pressure. And well, it really does. And that is 1/3 of the power. The sound it makes echoes in the entire shop. But not just that. The best part is the capacity. I was expecting to get 4 or 5 shots out of one refill, but in reality, it took like 20. That means you can smash the hammer at least 20 times before having to refill the tank. So, let's see what happens if I add the bolt. Now, the reason why I decided to push only this tiny bolt forward and not the entire hammer head is the speed. I believe moving forward the entire head, which is very heavy, would be way less destructive compared to a pretty light bolt moving very fast. But that's literally just guessing. So, I guess there are 3 possible scenarios here. In the first one, the bolt is too weak, and it doesn't add any extra damage compared to a normal sledgehammer. In the second one, the bolt moves so fast and with so much energy that the springs can't stop it and it would damage the internal components. While in the third option, the hammer is very powerful and the springs work. Well, if this first test goes according to the plan, I'm gonna then test the hammer against a few tough targets and compare it to a normal one. So I'm trying first with a low pressure, like 1000 psi. And the hammer worked. The piston left a few marks into the wood, but nothing crazy so far. The problem is that the pressure inside the tank dropped after just 3 or 4 hits, compared to the 20 of before. So, there is definitely something wrong. So we disassembled the hammer, and we found the problem. The O-ring that should wrap around the pin and make sure all the air goes from the valve into the barrel simply wasn't there. So we fixed that. We also removed the special springs which were too stiff and only left the normal one. And after reassembling the hammer, I'm gonna now try with 2200 psi, which is about half of the maximum power and very light hits.
Oh!
I think we're starting to get there. I'm basically splitting concrete bricks in half with one hit every single time. But I still believe by simply changing 2 things, the power is gonna get way higher. The first one is obviously increasing the pressure to the limit. You can see when the pressure drops after each hit, the power of the bolt decreases with it. So by doubling the pressure, are we gonna get double the power? But the other modification, which I think is gonna influence the power even more than increasing the pressure, is the amount of air that flows behind the piston. Basically, the bigger this hole in the pin of the valve, the higher the amount of air that is gonna push the bolt. So I'm gonna go from this valve to this one. This new hole is almost 2 times larger than the previous one. Also, the gauge on the new valve glows in the dark, which is pretty cool. Alright, since I'm scared, especially by the new valve, before running the full test and compare this hammer to a normal sledgehammer, I wanna go for one empty shot, without the piston, at 4000 psi. Let's see if we can tell the difference. This time, it took about 5 minutes to fill the tank. But now, I'm ready to try it. I'm gonna use this hammer here to activate it. If it activates. Not sure. And well,
Jesus.
my ears couldn't stand it.
It was light. Let me try to hit it very hard.
Even without the big, echoey warehouse, my brain switched to panic mode and put my headphones on. So, this definitely works. And because the valve pin hole is bigger, more air comes out of the tank, and you also get less shots for one refill. Anyways, after disassembling the hammer and inserting the bolt, I'm now ready for the final test. So I've got a few targets here, going from pretty brittle to very tough. And I'm gonna hit all of them both with my bolt hammer and a normal sledgehammer, all to find out if the bolt actually makes a difference. Also, at normal speed the bolt is almost invisible, so as usual, I'm gonna use an ultra slow motion camera for the test. This way we're gonna clearly see what's going on when the valve activates and the bolt hits the targets. Alright, after preparing the table, which is basically concrete blocks, I can now start with the first target, which is gonna be ballistic gelatin. I wanna see if the shockwaves of my hammer are gonna be somehow different from the shockwaves of a normal one. Let's try it. So, I'm gonna hit with the normal sledgehammer first. And now, the bolt hammer.
This sound. That felt like a gunshot.
And indeed, the bolt and the air added shockwaves compared to the normal hammer. However, since the bolt hammer is lighter, it also made the gelatin lift less off the table. But the bolt also left another kind of damage.
Oh my god, this is so interesting.
The bolt left a cavity that goes all the way through the width of the block, and it also damaged the table panel underneath. Next target is clay bricks, and I'm expecting both hammers are gonna be able to smash these ones. Alright, as you expected. But what about the bolt hammer? Well, I think I need tougher targets. Alright, I couldn't see it at normal speed, but after checking the slow motion footage, it's pretty clear what the bolt is doing. The weight of the hammer is responsible for the energy, but the bolt splits the targets and increases the damage, which is pretty cool. Now, speaking of damage, this whole project has been supported by Rhino Shield. And yes, I'm gonna smash bricks on their case. The Rhino Shield RX is built with a multi-layer internal damage protection system that absorbs up to 81% of impact. They even created their own G-force test simulator to lab-proof this case prevents hidden damage. And for durability, it's engineered to withstand over 24,000 tumble tests without cracking, and that is 30 times the industry standard. Not sure if they also tested it smashing bricks with an air-powered sledgehammer on the side of the case, but the phone seems fine. Haven't opened the case yet, but I mean, it's working. Then, after watching the slow motion, I realized the stand I used might have prevented some damage. So, I'm gonna try again, on the other side of the case, and with no stand on the back. Also, this case is built with mono material, ensuring 100% recyclability. And well, the phone is still working, but I'm curious to see what's the damage under the case.
This is where it hit now. This is where it hit before. Oh, no way. No way. This is pretty insane.
The case took all the damage, and the phone literally doesn't have a scratch. I said it in an older video and I confirm it. This is a great case. Rhino Shield even has thousands of designs you can choose from, so it's also a great gift. Like, this is my cat, and he's literally on the case. I gave this to my girlfriend as a gift and she loved it. So if you care about keeping your phone alive on the inside, not just the outside, and you want to smash bricks on it without scratching it, check out Rhino Shield. Use my code mikeshake for 15% off at the link in my description. Plus, you also get 10% off site-wide for the holiday sale. Alright, next target is concrete blocks. And I quickly went through one of them with a normal sledgehammer, not even with a clean hit. And then, same story with the bolt hammer. I barely hit the brick, but still managed to split it.
Gotta work on my aim for sure.
Alright, now it's starting to get serious. Next target, large, thick stones. And the normal sledgehammer easily smashed it. While the bolt hammer didn't work on the first attempt. And it didn't work on the second one either. The hammer made a loud noise as well. And from the slow motion, it's clear the bolt just skipped on the rock without penetrating it.
Something broke.
And that's not great. Not great at all. And then I realized what happened. Alright, I made a massive mistake. I spent months on the project of this hammer, and I literally never, like not once, thought about the most important thing for a sledgehammer. The steel. The reason why the hammer didn't split the stone is the same reason why the hammer broke, and that's the kind of steel it's made of. All the components are made of S235, which is literally like the worst possible steel you could use for a sledgehammer. Common sledgehammers use a steel that deforms 5 times less than S235. For a sledgehammer, that makes all the difference. But even though things didn't go as well as expected, I'm not giving up. I'm already working on a much better version with the toughest possible steel you could use for a sledgehammer and a brand new design to increase the overall power and avoid damages. I'm placing the order today, so I'm gonna show it to you very soon. Thank you for watching, guys.